Welcome to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast, where insights, attitudes, and methods for success get illuminated. Learn what leaders and change workers have done and are doing now to create magnificent futures. We interview great guests who inspire you to overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Be sure you visit our website at self-helpcoaching.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, just relax as you listen. You can do something else, but be ready to make an important note. And let's get started.
The title of this interview is Start and Grow Your Business with Brian Will. We'll be talking about how to establish foundation for a new startup, how to grow your business, increasing income and sales as a business owner. So, who is Brian Will? Well, he is the industry expert. Now, that's quite a claim, but we'll see. I think this guy is going to really back it up. Industry expert in sales and management consulting and best-selling author of the Wall Street Journal and USA Today best-selling book. And I love this title. And I hope this is me, I hope. The Dropout Multimillionaire. Even though I did graduate from high school, I dropped out of college, so I think it still applies to me. He is also a serial entrepreneur behind 7 successful companies in 4 different industries, 4 over the last 35 years. By the way, this is an audio podcast, but a very sliver amount of our audience will come on YouTube and see it. Brian and I are the same age. I look like I got one foot in the grave. This guy looks like he's 35 years old. So he says, so he's been working in his career for 35 years. He looks 35. Okay, so he's worked in 4 different industries in the last 35 years. Combined, these companies that he's worked with were worth over $500 million at their peak. Today, Brian runs tech and real estate companies from Denver to Georgia to Florida. He is also owner of restaurant chains. I love that. That's one of my goals as well. And he serves on the city council in his hometown of Alpharetta, Georgia. Oh, I know Georgia very well. Fort Benning almost ate me alive. During the course of his career, Brian has done multiple turnaround projects and helped those organizations drive billions of dollars in sales. That's what I'm talking about, Brian. Welcome.
Thanks, Tony. I appreciate you having me on today. This is going to be fun.
Brian and I were just talking before we began about how I'm a startup and we're just about to finally launch after years of development and the challenges that I'm facing. And he's like, oh yeah, that's the way it goes. I'm like, oh yeah, I should have been better, more pre-warned. It's taxing. Let's just say it's taxing. I feel the pressure increasing.
I say this in one of the chapters in the book. You need to understand that it's not meant to be easy. Life isn't going to be easy. Yeah. The world isn't going to make it easy. This country is not designed for everything to be easy. It's designed to hold you back. You've got to be willing to fight to overcome all the crap that's going to get thrown at you if you're going to successfully build a company. That's just a fact of life.
You know, I study capitalism and socialism, which are the 2 basic diametric economic systems and more than that. And, socialism has a good cause, so to speak. They say that, well, I'd say that capitalism is based on freedom. And when you have freedom, you have freedom of choice. And in that environment, some people will make good choices, some people make medium choices, some people make poor choices. And their performance and their lot reflects that. In socialism, they say, oh, you see all those people who are not at the top? That's because of the people at the top. So let's the bottom and the middle go attack the top, so we can all share our misery. And there's always an oligarchy, no matter what.
Of course,
being an entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur was easy, everybody would be it. And the fact is that not only the minority are entrepreneurs, but only a minority are actually successful, or at least their business less, because it is difficult.
I like to say this, I tell people this all the time. It's actually on the jacket of my book. 400,000 people a month start a new business. That's 4.8 million people a year. Only, 70% of them will fail in the first 5 years. And in any given year, only 40% of those businesses make money. So if 4.8 million start and only 40% are making money, that means 2.5 million of those people are either not making money or they're going to fail. That is a lot of people out there who weren't prepared, didn't know what they were up to, and don't know what they're doing. that are losing money, time, energy. Entrepreneurship is tough.
Let me tell you, Brian, I have not known what I did. I have paid big time. I'm just very, very fortunate that I was able to persist. And quite frankly, if I didn't believe that this product is so huge and has so much potential, I probably would have given up long ago. But I really believe in this product. I think it's going to be a game changer. It's going to transform self-help. It's going to change the world, because the mistakes I've made with losing capital, with hiring people, with accepting yesing and mediocre results has cost me dearly. And you know, we formed our company, Auxilium LLC, with my partner, July 2018. Before that, we had years of pre-development. And we've been so undercapitalized, and we've had our challenges, which I already alluded to, and we're finally getting to launch. And if I could, you know, if I would have, you know, could go back and knowing what I know now, we would have launched long ago. We'd have launched long ago. The lessons were so hard earned, and I'm so fortunate just that I'm still in the game.
But let me ask you a question, Tony, because this is a key to success and failure in business. I talk a lot about this, right? Every time you failed, did you learn something?
Absolutely.
Because success is a product of learning from failure. I always hear this, you need to fail to succeed. And that makes me cringe. That's not true. You need to learn from your failure to succeed. Too many people fail, didn't learn, and then they fail, and then they blame it on everything else in the world. It wasn't the right time. It was the economy. It was the circumstances. Somebody.
Exactly.
No, they just didn't learn from the failure. So I like to say everybody starts in business at a different point. If you got a Harvard MBA and you've got venture capital behind you and your dad's a CEO of a mega corporation, you're starting at plus 50. Right. Me, I started at like -10. So I had to go through a lot of learning, but my superpower is learning from failure.
Yep.
And it takes me a lot longer to succeed than other people, but you know what? I succeed at the end of the day, and so will you, as long as you keep learning.
Absolutely. That's the sophistry. Well, persistence is the key to success. It's true. But the other side of that coin is learning, just as you articulated. If you don't learn, you're screwed. Yes. That's the necessary performance of the business person. Is to learn, not just you know what's wrong, but to adjust. You know, the difference between 100 and 99 is just 1 point. Right?
We call this post-failure analysis. What did I do wrong? Don't do that again.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely. And you know, right now I'm dealing with getting my marketing team to work better with my tech team, and it's been difficult. And you know, you got to push and pull. You got to chill out. You can't be a dictator, right? You know, and all that. But you've got to get things happen. You can't allow mediocrity simply because you might step on toes. But you've got to. So this is where I'm at now. Is I can't come off as an ogre. Nobody. That's not the way to perform. But I also cannot allow people who I'm the head of the company. I don't say that with ego. I'm saying that in terms of role and responsibility. Sure. If we succeed, I get the credit, quite frankly. Yes. Well, lots of people involved, but if we fail, who else is going to get the blame but me? Yes. All right. So I can't allow people to say, oh, Tony, this is not the way we're doing things, or we don't do. I can't allow that. I say this is the way it's got to get. I mean, I'm totally always open to feedback, but I'm not open to dysfunction and lack of communication. We have to get things done. And so I'm not allowing passivity. I can't allow that. I can't afford that.
You have to execute on your vision. You need to get everybody on board and do the same thing. That's how you'll succeed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm feeling it, bro.
Yep.
So with all that lead up, let me get to my first golden question. What are the most important lessons to keep in mind when starting a business? We've already touched on it, certainly, but there's the question articulated.
All right. So I like to end a lot of podcasts with this, but since you asked the question, I'm going to start it.
I'm a backwards guy, Brian.
Right. Yeah, it's okay. It's good. So, and this is the example I always use. So Tony, I'm going to ask you a couple questions. It's going to be a give and take. You ready?
Sure.
What kind of phone do you have? Is it an Apple
I got an iPhone.
You got an iPhone. Okay. So it's made by Apple Computer, right?
Right.
Okay. I'm leading you here. It's like leading the witness, right?
And
so
by the way, my company Auxilium is going to be bigger than Apple. We'll see.
Good. So who runs Apple? Do you know the guy who's the CEO of Apple?
Yeah, I think that's Steve Cook or Tim Cook.
Tim Cook.
Yeah.
Tim Cook. He runs Apple. Apple's the biggest company in the world, most profitable. It's gigantic, right? We're talking a guy that has to be really, really smart to run this massive organization. Would you agree with this?
Yes, I'd agree with that basically.
So next question. So this is like I'm leading you here, right? So
yeah, that's fine.
You understand what a board of directors is, right?
Yeah, right. These are the people who make the basic decisions, the policy decisions, strategic decisions.
Exactly. So Tim Cook has a board of directors, and they come in once a quarter. And I like to joke they all come into the big conference room, and it's they got all 12 of them there, and they got their Jimmy John subs, and they're hanging out, and they're like, "All right, Timmy, what's going on?" And Tim's like, "Oh, I'm having this problem in China, and Foxconn's giving us some problems, and there's a political issue over here." And they all give their opinion, and they come in and they say, "Listen, based on our background, based on what we do, based on how we think, this is the way we think you should approach these issues. And this is how we think you'll get them fixed." At the end of the meeting, Tim takes all their recommendations. He says, "Man, that was awesome. Thank you for the help. I appreciate it." He takes all that information and he goes and he runs Apple Computer. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, it sounds a little bit more like an advisory board than a board of directors, but okay.
Conceptually.
Yeah, it seems to me, for me, board directors are more, they make decisions, and you said they were making recommendations there. So that's why I'm having.
Tim's the chairman of the board in this case. Most people that are CEO are chairman of the board. My point is this: if Tim Cook needs a board of directors to help him make decisions on moving this company forward, what makes you as a young entrepreneur think that you don't need somebody to come in and help you?
Totally.
And this is where we get into coaching and mentoring. And if you're going to launch a business, the very, very, very first thing you need to do, stop listening to your friends, stop listening to your parents, stop listening to your relatives, and find somebody who's been there and done that, Absolutely. Who can come in and say, "That's a mistake. That's a mistake. Do that different," because they've already done it. And if you will do that at the beginning, it will save you so much time and energy and heartache, and possibly give you an exponentially higher success factor than trying to figure it out everything on your own. Find somebody to help you. That's the number one thing.
That reminds me of the old adage: if you want to be rich, don't ask poor people. Don't even ask people in the middle class. Ask rich people.
Don't ask people who want to give you their unsolicited advice, who have never done it before. Because if they haven't done it, the only thing they can tell you how to do is what they've done.
Exactly.
So that's number one. Find somebody to help you.
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, when my company Auxilium, when we start staffing out, I have an LLC, and I intend to keep it private. Though, okay, just leave it at that. But we'll have a board of advisors very soon. And by the way, so I'm the founder of the company. I have a partner, co-founder. I will not be running my company, Brian. I'm going to have people much smarter than me, which is a lot of people, much more experienced than me. As a president, as a managing director, I'm the CEO. I'll be the chief of culture, but I won't be running it, because I'll run it into the ground. I'm going to have people know what they're doing.
So let me give you point number 2. Since you brought it up, I'm going to lead you here again.
Okay.
Number 2, most important thing if you're going to launch a company is knowing who you are not.
There you go. I got a good grasp on that.
Yes, because there are people, most of the time, they're good at something. So they start a company, but they're not good at running a company. And those are 2 different skill sets. Completely different. You need somebody with managerial skills that knows how to do the payroll and when the insurance is due and where to put the hiring posters. And they're going to, all the crap that you don't want to do as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
Get somebody else to come in and do that, and do what you're good at.
Yeah.
Don't get your ego in the way of succeeding by thinking that you are everything to everyone, because you are not.
Absolutely. Now, of course, the conundrum for the entrepreneur is, until they get into that position, they got to wear all 20 hats. 100%. Right. And that's where I'm at. I'm so sick. I have blisters on my forehead from the hats going on and off, and finally we're launching, like I said, and I am every day I think about the company that I'm going to build. I have all these notes and plans, because not just because it's going to be great, but because I'm going to have people who really know what they're doing and want to be there doing it. And that's going to produce great results, because that's exactly what you want. And, I believe in delegation, not just because of expertise on the obvious side, but I am intrinsically a lazy person.
Tony, we call this ambitiously lazy, not lazy.
Okay.
Ambitiously lazy.
Very good.
I'm willing to work my ass off to make enough money that I can be lazy.
Yeah, that's me. That is true. That's true. I like to be a little self-deprecating. I mean, I am lazy, but everybody has foibles and deficiencies. But the truth, I mean, like I've already said, I've been working at my company for years. And you know, you've got in order to succeed, it takes a sufficient amount of action. Now,
Yep.
Now sufficient is an operative word there, because you can take action, but if it's insufficient, it's going to amount to failure, right? If it's sporadic, probably the same thing. There has to be enough consistency and enough amount where it's going to have an effect that's wanted. So as long as you're getting that level, you should be all right. But that level is that level. It's not, you know, reality will tell you if it's real or not, if it's good enough or not. Reality, will, not your own, not your girlfriend. My girlfriend's like, oh, let's go party. I'm like, I got work to do. She's like, no, you've been working all day. Yeah, you know, I got a lot of responsibilities.
Yep, I get it. So,
next question.
All right.
We're not even going to take a commercial break. I want to segue into the next question. All right. So we've already it's a perfect segue. Why do most businesses fail?
Well, it's part of the first two things, right? Number one, they don't bring somebody in to help them.
Right.
Number two, they try to be something they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And number three, I call, and it ties into this a little bit. I call this your personal filter, and your personal filter is going to be the difference between you succeeding and not succeeding, right? So this is a little longer of a drawn out answer. So I hope you got a minute here.
No, I want to hear it.
So think about somebody, and the example I use in the book is think about somebody who grows up in, say, France, right? They grow up, speak French, right? They think like a French person. They eat French food. Everything about them is French. Everything they think and do is based on the environment they grew up in, all the information they came at them. And when you take them and you put them in a different environment, let's say you bring this person over and drop them into Cleveland, Ohio, they're still thinking like a French person. They still talk like a French person. Everything is, they're not going to fit in. Now, I use this example.
We hate them. No, I'm only kidding.
I use this example because everything that's ever happened to you in your life has gone into your brain. From the time you were born, your parents told you things, and it became part of your filter. And your teachers in elementary school and high school told you things that became part of your filter. Your friends and the peer pressure, everything they told you became part of your filter. Now, this filter sits behind your conscious and your subconscious, and it takes information in no matter what's coming at you. In fact, there will be somebody listening to this right now, this podcast, and I'm talking, and they're thinking, this guy's full of crap, because their filter will not accept what I'm telling them. Right.
Let me tell you, as someone who was a personal development coach, I can tell you that Brian is exactly correct. Exactly correct.
And this filter is dynamic, by the way. So you listen to the next podcast and you go, you know what? I really like what that person said. That becomes part of your filter. And your boss gives you information. So what happens is, here we are, we've rolled along in life, and suddenly we jump into a business. We're a new, young, fresh entrepreneur. The problem is there's nothing in our subconscious, there's nothing in that filter that tells you how to make successful decisions in a business. You and I talked about this earlier. You have to fail and fail and fail as long as you learn. You got to fail and learn. You're failing because your subconscious doesn't know what decision to make that's going to be correct for this new business you're in, right? This is why we bring in people to help us. They have a success filter in the area that we're going after. They can help us make better decisions. This is why failure leads to failure. If all you've ever done is fail, then all you're ever going to do is fail unless you learn from the failure and change your filter. Now, the problem with having this failure filter, we call it, is you don't even know when you should be dropping your ego. You don't know when you're making bad decisions. And so you're automatically making these bad decisions without even knowing they're happening, right? So in order for you to develop a success filter, go back to point one, you got to bring somebody in who's been there, done that, who can say, Tony, don't do that. I'm telling you, I've been there, I've done that. You're doing it wrong. That's a mistake, and it's going to cost you another 3 months. And then he's going to say, this is the way you need to do it. Do it this way, and this will succeed. And if you are an entrepreneur, you got to drop your ego, understand that you don't know what you're doing, listen to somebody else help you, have success, take that success, put it back in your filter, and eventually enough successes will give you the success filter you need in the endeavor that you're going after. So the number one reason people fail is because their filter is wrong. They're not processing information successfully based on whatever it is they're going after. So
and you'll know. See, I have two things to say, which are self-directed, but they're totally appropriate. In Proficio, which is the world's first self-help coach. We're starting off with our premier course, Benjamin Franklin. And what was that point you just made, Brian? Because I had two thoughts in my head.
That your filter is probably not a success filter.
Oh
if
yeah,
you're in
okay,
business.
got it. You're talking about taking the advice of someone who knows what they're doing.
Yes.
Benjamin Franklin has a core philosophy, and he precedes it. He starts it off with talking about advice, and he says most people, they don't listen to advice, and they pay for it, and they don't even know.
100% right.
And if they took advice, it probably may or may not have changed the outcome or affected it. You'll know if you should have taken advice by what happens.
Yep.
Okay. If you do good, you accomplish a goal, you did the right thing by not disregarding the advice.
Yes.
If you didn't, you should have took the advice or some hybrid of it because someone else or some other people knew better than you and you didn't listen to them.
Here's the biggest problem, Tony. People they tell you they're going to take the advice. Give me advice. I'll take it. Okay, I'm going to give you advice, but you got to listen to me. I swear I'll listen. Right. And then they take half the advice. They throw the other half out. It doesn't work. And then they're like, your advice sucks. It doesn't work.
Yeah,
like,
that's the
you didn't follow what I said.
Failure to follow instructions. I learned that in the Army. And you know, it's funny. I know this. It's such a great conversation we're having because you've never, in all the interviews I've done, which is coming up on 95 for this podcast, no one has prompted this content from me. So I really appreciate that, Brian. So we took The Way to Wealth, which you probably heard. Benjamin Franklin wrote it in the 1700s. Still never went out of print today. We took it, we reinterpreted it. We interpreted it for the modern person, and we elaborated on it. So I said that's how he begins it. He's talking about his philosophy that starts with advice. The way he ends The Way to Wealth is talking about advice again. He comes full circle. And he says, now that I've made my case, and his case is very compelling, right, about all these principles of wealth and success, he goes, most of you have nodded in agreement and you're not going to do it.
Nope.
That's exactly what you're not going to do it because that's the way people are. Because
their filter's kicking it out and saying that isn't going to work or I got a better idea. Your ego is what's killing you. You got to get your ego out of the way.
And and by the way, you know, you're so dead on with filters. You know, we created Proficio, which is an automation, it's a virtual coaching program so that a person, it solves the first three problems of self-help. The person doesn't start, gets them to start. The person doesn't learn or apply, gets them to do that. The person doesn't complete, Proficio gets to do that with the home study course. And then afterwards, it gets them to consistently apply what they've learned towards their goals. That's how it works. Awesome. But the way we do that is we have the winning is really basically dictated on preparation. The more you prepare, the greater you increase the probability of winning. So, and that's not lost on me. So we created a great pre-course where we assess the people, you know, it's all automatic. Proficio takes the assessments, learns about them psychologically as an individual, as a true individual person, and then runs them through a super learning mini course. But what does it do? One of the things that it's a primary part of this assessment is learning their filters. Exactly correct. In NLP, I'm a practitioner of NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. We call it meta programs, which are simply strategies and filters that are internal. You know, two people see the same thing. One person sees one thing, the other person sees the other thing because there's two different filters, right? Yes. And then they go about doing things differently because they have two different strategies from the same information. And that is a critical thing. And you've got to either have some awareness of that or some flexibility. Otherwise, that's going to dictate what you do. And what you do may be, you know, ineffective.
Right. I use the example of my kids. I have two children, grew up in the same household with the same parents and they're totally different. Yeah, right. You can take the same information in and go totally different directions with it. It's just, it gets in the little the nature and the nurture thing and how that affects you. But you're exactly right. Two people listen to what we're talking about today. One will accept it. One will reject it. That's just the way it works.
To my listening audience, I told Brian at the beginning that I think this would be a really great conversation. I was right because we've gone nearly a half hour and I haven't even had a commercial break yet. because the conversation has been so urgent. I would say it's urgent. I'm like, okay, I'm not taking a commercial break. No way I'm stopping this train. But let's take a moment to hear from our sponsor, and we'll come right back with Brian Will.
This episode of Self-Help Coaching is brought to you by Proficio. When people learn something, they want to use it, so it has real value. And the best teacher is experienced. Visit www.proficio.io. That's PERFICIO.io, where Proficio will have you taking action with what you're learning immediately. You'll be closer to your goals before you even realize it.
You're listening to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast with me, your host, Tony Petrozza. We're having an incredible conversation with Brian Will. I just couldn't stop it. It was just so wonderful. And it was, certainly I know what Brian's about, and I know questions to ask him, but it's been an organic conversation, discussion. That's the best. That's the best. I mean, it's the juiciest. It's been very juicy, and I have no doubt it will continue. So, I mean, we've already talked about advice and about filter. And so if a person thinks that they know what's best to do, okay, right, taking their own advice, should they do it? Maybe they might be right, they might be wrong, or something in the middle. What's the deal, Brian? I'm
going to reiterate this. One of my podcast episodes is should you trust your own instincts? And my answer is maybe not.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I also say, don't chase the advice of billionaires. Another one of my favorite lines, because they're so far ahead of you. You don't think the same. There's just no possible way that what they're going to say is going to help you in launching or running your small or medium-sized business. So I would find somebody 10 steps ahead of you. And if nothing else, buy them lunch and say, this is what I'm thinking. I'm going to try this. What do you think? Maybe you shouldn't trust your own instincts. If you've never had success, then you should definitely find somebody to help you.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that Proficio, I'm not doing this deliberately. I mean, it's always part of my strategy, but I don't do it a lot because the conversation goes its own direction. But the value you're talking about, we go into that with Proficio because it's designed to have a person succeed. But a person, I lost my train of thought.
Look, your organization, your business does exactly the same thing. It's just not maybe business focused. It's self-help focused. It's right. The same thing. It's your personal filter. Look, if you were making all the correct decisions, you wouldn't need self-help. But at some point you got to go, wait a minute, maybe I'm doing something wrong here. Let me go find it.
And I contend that the reason why self-help doesn't work, and it doesn't work. Although if self-help worked, I would have been a multi-millionaire 20 years ago, Brian. I'm still at it. All right. And I remembered my thought, by the way. But the reason why self-help doesn't work, along with almost everything else, that everybody needs a little bit more. And you just talked about, you just said a mentor. One of the things that Proficio coaches a person to learn using accelerated learning, what we call super learning, which is our own little regimen. And one of the things that it will tell or coach a user to do is to get a mentor. Just what you talked about. What are you learning? Get a mentor that's related to that. Listen to that person. Yep. That person knows what he's talking about or what she's talking about, especially if they got success in that endeavor. That doesn't have to be right in that field, but they got to.
Okay. Yeah. Let me preface this with,
please. And
I say this to people all the time. I can go online right now. I did it the other day on another podcast. It's funny. And for $149, I can become a certified life coach.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You need to be careful who you're taking advice from.
You don't even need, sir. I was a life coach. There's no regulation. You don't need a certification. You don't even need a day of training,
You said the right thing. You said, find somebody who's actually had the success. Don't just find anybody.
Right.
I mean, there's 3 housewives on my block who are certified, business life coaches who have never done anything in their life.
Right.
And the other point I make, and this was a funny one, everybody needs help. I have a picture on my Instagram page. You're familiar with the Tough Mudder race?
No.
It's like 10 miles of craziness. And one of the obstacles is this 6-foot deep mud pit. They take a backhoe and they dig this giant hole and they fill it up with water, and you have to jump into the hole, right? Now, everybody's down in this just muddy, nasty water, And you got to get out the other side. I don't care if you're an Olympic athlete. I don't care how good you are. You can't get out of the hole without help. It's impossible. Everybody needs help sometimes to get out of the hole.
That's the slogan of my podcast, is that we're all responsible for ourselves and we could all use a little help. And sometimes you don't even could use it. You just need it desperately.
Yes.
You got,
no matter how good you are.
Absolutely. I've long said that asking for help is a sign of greatness. Most people are like, oh no, they think it's the opposite. No, it's a sign of greatness. Humility is a critical thing. A lot of people think humility is being shy or meek. That's a gross misconception. Humility is knowing yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And then being honest about your weaknesses, so that maybe someone else can help you, fortify you in that area, or get you out of that hole, as you just described. Yep. Because that's the truth, is that we're not everything. No man is an island, if you will. And sometimes some things we can do well, and some things we just do poorly. Yep. And also, another thing I like to say is that, and I don't say this with any denigration towards any person, is that I say to help a person, including myself, stay humble, is that by myself I can do very good, but it's only in cooperation where I do great. As a team player, I'm a huge individualist. Okay, I'm not putting down a person, because you're not going to get a more pro individual person than me.
Yep.
But it's with cooperation with others. Okay, well, how can we work together to accomplish goal? Damn, we do magnificent stuff.
Hey man, Shaquille O'Neal, who did he need? He needed Kobe Bryant.
They needed 4 other players, right?
Yeah, and Michael Jordan had Scottie Pippen.
Right.
Peyton Manning, he had receivers. He couldn't do it. Tom Brady and Ron Gronkowski.
Exactly.
Tom Brady can't carry a team.
Well, they're all stars, but they were all team players.
Yes.
Exactly it. Totally it.
Yeah.
I love it, man. So now, after when I introduced you, I mentioned some of your businesses. Can you talk about any of before we get into that, because this might be huge. let's take a moment to hear from our sponsor, and I want you to, when we come back, I want you to talk about some of the businesses that you've been involved with. You good with that, Brian?
Sounds good. Yep.
Great. Let's take a moment to hear from our sponsor. Come right back with Brian Will.
This episode of Self-Help Coaching is brought to you by Proficio. The pandemic has painfully shown how we must have money put away, not just for a rainy day, but for a whole bunch of them. You must accrue wealth to really be okay. Visit www.perficio.io. That's PERFICIO.io, where you can truly learn financial principles like never before, so that you can have the future you really want and need.
You're listening to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast with me, your host, Tony Petrozza. We're having a fantastic discussion about business with Brian Will, and now he's going to talk about some of the businesses that he's been involved with. Brian, what do you got?
So my story, I'll try to give you the 1-minute summary, but it is so diverse. I've done so many times in my life, I have done what I call a reincarnation of Brian Will. Right.
I love it.
And part of it is my ADHD, right? I can only focus on things for so long, and I got to have something new and exciting. So super quick, failed out of high school my junior year, ended up getting back in, graduating 1.2 grade point average, went into the military, spent a year on active duty, came back into the National Guard, tried to get a job, got fired as a landscaper, got fired as a construction guy, got fired as a Little Caesars pizza counter person, got fired as a waitress, got a job as a busboy. And that's what I was when I got married. My wife was a waitress and I was a busboy, and nobody looked at me and thought, this guy is going to kill it. Nobody. Got married, didn't have a car, a house, a job, lived with my grandmother, went to work for a landscaping company, worked there 2 weeks, and I thought, anybody can mow grass. So I started a landscaping business. 7 years later, I had 7 franchises in the Atlanta area. I thought I was rocking, and then I lost everything. I went from 100 back to 0.
How did that happen?
I learned a lot of business lessons in that failure. And one is the old adage, never put all your eggs in one basket. I had one contractor that I was working for that was 90% of my business. And when they hired a new VP and he brought his son in to do the landscaping, I got fired and we lost millions in business. Yeah. And I had credit I couldn't pay for. I had a mortgage and 2 car payments and a motorcycle payment and credit card payments. And I went broke. Right. So I lost everything.
You were dependent on one entity.
Yes. So a lot of lessons there. Started selling health insurance, weirdly enough, through the Rush Limbaugh show. We used to advertise on his show back in 1996. And within 6 weeks, I decided to start my own insurance agency. I did that. A year and a half later, sold it to a venture capital firm because it was a beginning of the .com boom. Started another one, which I ended up selling to another venture capital firm out in Silicon Valley. It's called getinsured.com. They're one of the largest state exchange-based carriers today. Started another company on the internet with another partner doing internet marketing. We sold that to a private equity firm in 2006 for about $60 million. Started doing consulting for Fortune 500 companies and how to do sales and management, mostly direct-to-consumer stuff. Started a restaurant, ended up with 2, 3, 4, 6, 10, 12, had this little restaurant chain going on. Let's see, wrote a couple books, which we talked about earlier, The Dropout Multimillionaire and I Give the Dumb Kids Hope. Got into local politics. I sit on city council today. And now I've launched this small to medium-sized business consulting company trying to work with young entrepreneurs and help them avoid these mistakes that you and I are talking about right here. Yeah. So that's as quickly as I can go through it. Hopefully I didn't lose you there.
That's a wonderful resume and evolution biography. I love it, man. I've had a number of businesses, all of them quote unquote failed, but I learned every time.
Every time.
And sometimes I like to say I'm failing to success, but I say that I'm being loose with words. I learned from my failures. Just as you said, you were very articulate. I learned from my failures, and it's all about learning. It's best to learn from other people, but sometimes you have no choice but to learn from your own. Actually, you always have a choice. You can either learn or not learn, and pain will be there either way.
This is a beauty of children, right? My daughter is like 21 and she's doing something. I'm like, honey, don't do that. You're going to fail. Daddy, I need to learn the hard way. Otherwise, how am I ever going to know what I was doing wrong? And I'm like, oh my God, why are you telling me this? This is just terrible. But okay, go fail. I'll just sit here and watch.
Great. Okay, so let's get down to our meaty thing for any person who is interested in business. How can you build value in your business?
So we call this a difference between self-employed and being a business owner, right? Okay. Self-employed person is usually the person who doesn't really have a team of people. They don't have a company. It's an architect that does their own architecture. It's a CPA that does taxes for people. It's any small business where you are the primary person in the business versus what we call a business owner. A business owner is someone who builds a team. They build process. They build protocol. They build a business that doesn't require them to physically be there and do it. If you can build a business, and this is something I've always done, like my restaurants, I don't know how to cook, don't know how to make drinks. I don't know how to seat people. If there's a problem in the restaurant, I am literally not the last person they call. They don't even call because there's nothing I can do. Right. Like I have no point in calling that guy. He's useless, right? You need to build a business that doesn't require you to be there. Absolutely. That's a business that has intrinsic value. Yep. That's a business that you can sell at some point down the line and, make a big chunk of money, so to speak. If you are the primary driver in your business, if you are the technical expertise in your business, or if you're the person doing all the work and all the customers know and love you, you're basically self-employed. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's not something you can sell. Nobody's going to buy a business that relies on you.
Absolutely. As I said to you earlier, I'm building a company that I don't intend to sell or go public with, but it is absolutely built as a business where it's totally systemic, all systems. Tony Petrozza doesn't even have to show up. It will run probably even better without me.
Yep. Okay? That's like I said. Yeah. Don't call me. I can't help.
Right. It doesn't need me. Doesn't want me. My job is to be is CEO, actually chief of culture, but I'll have the director of culture. So my job will be done by that person.
Exactly.
Okay? I'm going to be so unnecessary that I'm going to probably have to fight to keep my job, or at least I'll be getting the dividends. But absolutely, it's all about building systems.
Yes.
Systems that operate without you and that they should have a fail safe, or at least they should have some sort of contingency to, you got to expect things to go wrong. All right. Because they
always
will. Yep. They will.
Yep. I like to be on the ski slopes. I get a text. Here's what's going on. Okay, thanks. And I go back up the lift and go down again.
Great. Yeah, you go up the lift, you find out about a problem in your company. By the time you're back at the bottom, oh, it's solved. Oh, that's right.
I used to have a guy that worked for me, and we'd have a problem, and I'd be in my office, and I'd always watch. He'd walk in the office, he'd look at me, and he goes, forget it. And he'd turn around and walk away.
I love it. I as we spoke about even before we went live, I love business, man, but it's hard. It's hard.
It's what I do for fun. It's my hobby.
Well, yeah, well, you love it, but you take it seriously, right?
Oh, of course.
Right. Of course.
People say, what do you do for fun? I'm like, I do business. That's what I do for fun.
There's so many facets to business, and I think one of the biggest parts we've talked about this is learning. Learn how to improve yourself as a businessman, business person, to improve your business, which is to say how you serve your customers, right? And it is a lot of fun in there, but there's a lot of time where I'm just feeling so tired. I'm like, I gotta go rest. I'm like, wait, this gotta get done. But this is what I'm working towards, Brian. I'm working so that I'm doing all this stuff so that I can just sit back on that ski lift and know whether maybe I'm being informed on my iPhone or be Android. Hello, Google.
Yep.
And that business is running, and if there was problems, it's getting addressed and it's being taken care of. That's what I'm working for.
Absolutely, that's the key.
I love it, man. Okay, let's take our final break, and we'll come back with the last unfortunate segment of Brian.
This episode of Self-Help Coaching is brought to you by Perficio. Perficio learns more about you as you make progress and then uses that information to help you even more. It is quasi-AI. Visit www.perficio.io. That's PERFICIO.io, where you can be helped by something that learns more about you, because that is the difference that makes the difference.
You're listening to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast with me, your host, Tony Petrozza. We're here with Brian Will. It's been a great discussion about business and about value and about how an entrepreneur or a would-be entrepreneur has to have a certain mindset and they have to discard certain things about themselves. A very, very valuable discussion for any entrepreneur or would-be entrepreneur. And this is just as you said it, I'm not sure if you said this before an interview began or afterwards, but you talked about how the statistics of success for the entrepreneur are really, the odds are against you.
Yes.
So in order to defy those odds, you're going to really have to prepare and really learn and even humble yourself as you articulated. Yep. Not just getting a mentor. Someone's got a placard outside the house, certified life coach. And by the way, I'm selling those certifications too, $149, like you said. You want to get a mentor that has the track record, that has the experience of doing what you want to do. That's the best. I mean, that's not the only limitation, but if you got that, then you probably can rest easy that their advice is sound. But okay, all that said, all that preface. Now, there are times you got to say yes, and times you got to say no, right?
Yep.
What does no mean for your business?
What do you mean? What do you mean? Clarify that question for me.
Sometimes you got to say no, right? When somebody asks you something, and we all want to say yes, we all want to please people, right? Sometimes in running of your business, you've got to say no. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, and there's a lot of variations to that no.
Okay.
I mean, I had to let somebody go this morning who was a senior person in the organization, and that's the hardest thing in the world to do.
And how long were they with you?
They'd only been here about 6 months, but I brought them in the senior position, and in that course of time, the team underneath them lost faith. They lost confidence, and when that happens, it starts affecting everything, right? And you have to sometimes look out for the good of the organization. And as hard as it is, you got to make decisions that are very tough. And I had to do one of those this morning.
And that's one of the reasons why a person doesn't want to be an entrepreneur.
That's exactly right.
They have to make hard decisions. People don't want hard decisions.
No.
They don't want to step on toes. They don't want to say no to somebody. They don't want to displease anybody. But that's a kind of a cop out. And I don't say that as any sort of sadist even though I am. But making hard decisions is just what it implies. There's a consequence to it that some people are not going to like.
Well, in this case, you've got 150 other people that you have to look out for, as well as your own family. So you have to do what's best for the good of the collective, so to speak, even as hard as it is and as bad as it sucks. Sometimes you just have to. And if you're not prepared to do those kind of things, I talk about this also. I like to see if I can talk people out of business, or if I can talk them even out of their job. I have a whole chapter of like, why in the world are you getting in business? I mean, keep your job. It's easy. You get a salary, you get vacation. You don't have to fire people. Nobody's going to sue you. You don't get calls at 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
And if I can talk you out of business, then you never should have done it. And I say at the end of this chapter, I said, now everything I said, do you want to go get a job, or are you now pissed off at me? Because if you're mad, then you probably have a shot. You got to really, really want what you're going after to make it.
I was just having a conversation with my girlfriend earlier this week, and we were talking about multi-level marketing. Now, I have experience in multi-level marketing in the 90s. I like it, but it's so much hype in it.
Hey, Amway started my whole career. I didn't throw that in there, but I wouldn't be anywhere without it.
Fantastic. Amway, if those who know, is the first really big multi-level marketing or network marketing company that started in the 50s. If I'm not mistaken. Very, very, very big. Also controversial too, but hey, the more successful you are, the more controversial it'll be, period.
Yep.
Anyway, multi-level marketing is a great system where basically a person can buy into the business by becoming a distributor, and they become a quote unquote franchise owner, if you will. And so anyone can become a businessman. And so a lot of people who have no experience or resume with business, oh yeah, this is my chance to be a businessman working for my own. They don't realize that being a successful business person is a lot of work. Yeah, an MLM company is making it easy for you because it's franchising, you're buying in. But to think that you're going to be successful without the business mindset, without allotting to become a business person, right? Which means your operations, your sales and marketing, without an advertising budget, quite frankly, all right, no matter what, without changing the mindset from whoever you were to a business person, right? You're going to fail. So that's why a primary reason why I contend people in MLM get involved with MLM and fail. And there's certainly other reasons, but they got to act like a business person means not acting like an employee anymore. All right.
Well, they target non-business people, and that's the challenge. And then they promise them that they're going to be successful. And the reality is they have a learning curve ahead of them that is gigantic.
Exactly.
And look, to their credit, I started reading books and I started listening to positive stuff and the whole self-help thing. And that changed my whole life without a doubt, but it took me 20 years,
right?
Not 6 months.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. People want, they want the instant gratification, and that's a big thing. You've got to learn how to be patient, because impatience will ruin you. You could be on the verge of success and then run out of patience, and then you're screwed.
Yep. 100%.
You got to be patient. Great. And then, getting back to my questions, about when saying no regarding business, a lot of people are going to want to do things or want something from you that either you don't have the time because you have to do things in business, or the energy because you have to do business, and you just got to say no. Or can you do this favor for me, Tony? And sometimes you're going to say no, I cannot do it. I've got to do this. Or can you go out? Can you go out partying? Or no, I have responsibilities, right? And I have a wherewithal. I have a certain amount of time, 24 hours, no matter if you're the richest or the poorest, right? 24 hours in a day. And a certain amount of energy, and I have to allot it or reserve it or proportion it. And that means I have to say no, if not a lot, but when it's certainly time to say no, because you'll run out of that time and energy, and you
only got so much bandwidth, right?
Exactly.
And when you're ADHD like me, your bandwidth is small.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. My brain is a sponge. I don't want it sopping wet. I'll have it sopping wet, but only with useful information.
Right.
Not with a bunch of crap.
Right.
Okay.
This is the beauty of having people that work for you, because I push it. Go talk to him.
Yeah.
And then when him comes back to me, I'm like, I didn't want to hear that anyway. I just made you listen to it because I didn't want to.
Yeah, right, exactly. Brian, this has been a most wonderful discussion. I
Super
really
fun.
appreciate it. How can someone find out more about you or get a hold of you?
You can go to my website, which is www.brianwillmedia.com. brianwillmedia.com. My books are there. The podcast is there. Newsletters there. Everything's on the website.
Right.
You can buy the books there if you want to. So that's how you get me.
So that's 2 L's in Will, brianwillmedia.com. He's, of course, He's on Instagram. He's on Facebook.
Yep. That's
LinkedIn.
called the Dropout MM. Dropout MM. And that's a Dropout multimillionaire. Dropout MM on any social media platform.
Yep. LinkedIn, YouTube, all of that. So I really encourage you to check out Brian, check out his book. I'm going to be talking more to Brian because he has more than intrigued me. He certainly knows what he's talking about. That is quite obvious. Been a pleasure meeting you and having this conversation with you, Brian. And do you have any final remarks for our audience?
This is it. I mean, there's just so much in business, man. I'm going to end it how I started it. If you're going to be in business, find somebody that's been there and done that. Have them help you. That will accelerate your success and keep you from failure.
Right now I'm about to do it again. In New York, I'm in New York, you're in Georgia. We have SCORE. I think that's the whole thing. That's national, right? Yep. I'm about to get another SCORE mentor. I had one before. Yeah. And this is a guy, this is some old guy or woman. They tend to be guys that have had, they're retired and they're like, hey, I was a businessman my whole life and I need something to do. And so they mentor, they take proteges, people who are like me or that need some guidance or some good advice. And so I'm about to get my next one.
And by the way, that's Senior Corps of Retired Entrepreneurs, SCORE. That's what it is.
Thank you. I was a little less kind than Brian saying the official thing. Great stuff. I really appreciate it. And remember, everyone, I already said my slogan, but because Brian prompted it, but I'll say it again. We're all responsible for ourselves, and we could all use a little help. With that, thanks for listening to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast. Thanks very much, Brian. A pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to the Self-Help Coaching Podcast, where insights, attitudes, and methods for success get illuminated. Learn what leaders and change workers have done and are doing now to create magnificent futures. Remember to visit our website at self-helpcoaching.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Self-Help Coaching Podcast.